The champagne glasses caught the light like tiny prisms. My sister Natalie's engagement party was everything my mother had dreamed of: white roses spilling from crystal vases, a string quartet playing softly in the corner, guests in cocktail dresses that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I stood near the French doors, watching it all unfold like a play I wasn't meant to be in. Then Uncle Howard walked up to me, martini in hand, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "So, Claire, your mother tells me you're still renting that little apartment in the city. When are you going to invest in property like your sister? Build some real wealth?" I saw my mother's face go rigid. My father's hand froze halfway to his drink. Natalie stopped mid-laugh, her new fiancé Brandon looking confused. I smiled. "Actually, Uncle Howard, I own a house. I bought it 2 years ago." "Oh." His eyebrows lifted. "Well, that's wonderful. A little starter home." "Not exactly," I said, my voice steady. "It's a 4-bedroom Victorian in Ashbury Heights. Appraised at $1.5 million last month." The room didn't just go quiet. It went silent in a way that made the string quartet sound like screaming. My mother's champagne glass tilted, liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. My father's face drained of color so fast I thought he might faint. Natalie's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again like a fish pulled from water. "Before I tell you exactly how I bought that house and why my parents never knew, hit that like button right now. Because this story about family secrets, silent revenge, and the moment I stopped apologizing for being underestimated is going to leave you speechless. Drop a comment telling me the last time someone in your family completely underestimated you. And subscribe, because stories like this, where the overlooked child becomes the one holding all the cards, these are the ones that hit differently. I grew up in a house where love had conditions and approval had a price I could never quite afford. My parents, Gregory and Sharon, weren't cruel in the obvious ways. They never hit. They never screamed. But they had a way of making me feel like I was always missing something essential, some quality that would have made me worthy of the same attention they poured into Natalie. Natalie was 3 years younger, but she might as well have been the sun the rest of us orbited. She had my mother's blonde hair and my father's easy charm. When she walked into a room, people turned. When I walked in, they looked past me to see who was coming next. I was 7 when I first understood I was different. It was Christmas morning. Natalie unwrapped a custom-built dollhouse that took up half the living room. 3 stories, working lights, hand-painted furniture. I unwrapped a board game. Used. The kind you find at garage sales with pieces missing. My mother saw my face and said, "Claire, don't be ungrateful. It's a perfectly good game." Natalie was 4 years old, sitting in front of her dollhouse kingdom, and she looked at me with something I'd see 1,000 more times, pity mixed with superiority. Even at 4, she knew. At 10, I made the honor roll every quarter. My mother stuck the certificates to the refrigerator with weak magnets that let them slide to the floor by evening. When Natalie made the honor roll 3 years later, my mother framed every certificate and lined them down the hallway like a gallery. "Claire, don't be jealous," she said when I asked why mine weren't framed. "You've always been naturally smart. Natalie has to work harder." We're celebrating her effort. The logic was airtight and completely insane. I succeeded, therefore I didn't need recognition. Natalie succeeded, therefore she deserved celebration. I learned to stop expecting fairness because the rules changed depending on who was playing. At 13, I wanted piano lessons. My parents said no. Too expensive. Not practical. I should focus on academics. 2 years later, Natalie wanted piano lessons. They bought a baby grand that cost $8,000 and hired a private instructor who came to the house twice a week. I sat at the top of the stairs listening to Natalie fumble through scales, and I felt something harden inside me. Not hate. Hate requires energy. This was colder. This was acceptance. High school was worse because the contrasts became public. Natalie joined cheerleading. My parents attended every game, painted signs, and hosted team dinners. I joined the debate team. My parents never came to a single tournament, even when I made nationals. "Debate isn't really a spectator sport, Claire," my father said, not looking up from his newspaper. But cheerleading was. When I got my driver's license, my parents said I could borrow the old Honda when they weren't using it. When Natalie got hers, they bought her a brand new Volkswagen with a bow on it for her birthday. I remember standing in the driveway watching her squeal and hug them, and my mother glanced at me over Natalie's shoulder. Her expression said, "Don't ruin this for her." I didn't. I never did. I learned to swallow my disappointment like bitter medicine. I learned to smile and clap and pretend I didn't notice the difference. College was my escape route. I applied to schools far from home and got into Berkeley with a partial scholarship. My parents said they'd help with the rest. Then, 2 weeks before tuition was due, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table. "Claire, we need to talk about money." My stomach dropped. "Your father and I have been discussing it, and we think it's better if you take out loans. We need to save for Natalie's college fund. She's younger, and she'll need more support." I stared at her. "She's 3 years behind me. You have 3 years to save. Don't be selfish, Claire. You've always been independent. You'll be fine." I took out $60,000 in student loans. I worked 3 jobs, campus library, weekend catering, overnight shifts at a gas station. I ate ramen and rice for months. I wore the same 3 outfits on rotation. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving or spring break because I couldn't afford the bus ticket. Natalie went to a private university that cost twice as much as Berkeley. My parents paid every cent. They sent her care packages. They visited once a month. They funded her study abroad semester in Paris. When I graduated with honors and debt, my mother said, "We're proud of you, Claire. You've always been a survivor." When Natalie graduated with a C average and no debt, my father threw her a party at the country club and gave a speech about how she'd blossom into greatness. I stopped going home after that. Not dramatically. I just faded. I got a job in San Francisco in tech marketing. I rented a studio apartment in the Tenderloin with bars on the windows. I learned to code at night. I freelanced on the side. I lived on 4 hours of sleep and cold coffee and the quiet, burning determination to prove something I couldn't yet name. My parents called once a month. The conversations followed a script. "How are you, Claire?" "Good." "Are you eating well?" "Yes." Natalie just got promoted. She's doing so well. I learned something crucial during those years. When you're underestimated, you have 2 choices. You can internalize it, believe you're worth less, shrink into the role they've carved for you. Or you can use it. You can let them think you're small while you build something they'll never see coming. I chose the second path. At 26, I met a man named Owen at a tech conference. He was older, mid-40s, a venture capitalist with tired eyes and a sharp mind. We talked for 3 hours about startups and risk and the difference between confidence and arrogance. He gave me his card. "You're smarter than you let people see," he said. "That's either going to save you or destroy you." He became my mentor. Not in a creepy way. He was married, happy, grounded. He saw something in me I was just beginning to see in myself, potential that hadn't been watered but refused to die. He introduced me to people. He taught me how to pitch. He showed me how to read a room, how to negotiate, how to walk into a space and make people take me seriously. Within 2 years, I was consulting for startups, taking equity instead of salary, betting on companies no one had heard of yet. One of them exploded. A tech platform for remote teams. I had 2% equity. When they got acquired, my shares were worth $1.2 million. I was 28 years old. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone except Owen, who took me out for whiskey and said, "Now comes the hard part. Don't blow it." I didn't. I lived in the same studio. I kept freelancing. I invested carefully and I waited. Then I found the house. It was a Victorian in Ashbury Heights, built in 1904, painted lady colors, lavender and cream and soft green. For bedrooms, original hardwood floors, a turret room with bay windows overlooking the city. It needed work. The kitchen was outdated. The bathrooms were brutal. But the bones were perfect. The asking price was $1.3 million. I offered $1.4 in cash, no contingencies, close in 2 weeks. The sellers accepted immediately. I bought the house on a Tuesday. I signed the papers in a lawyer's office downtown, my hand shaking slightly as I wrote my name. When it was done, the lawyer smiled and said, "Congratulations, Miss Hartley. You're a homeowner." I walked outside into the San Francisco fog, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly. Something quieter. Validation. Proof. Evidence that I wasn't the failure my family had implied I was. I didn't tell my parents about the house. I didn't post about it on social media. I moved in quietly, furnished it slowly with vintage finds and Craigslist steals. I renovated room by room, doing some of the work myself, painting, sanding, stripping wallpaper at midnight with music playing and dust in my hair. The house became my secret. My proof. My middle finger to every dismissal, every comparison, every time I'd been told I wasn't enough. Meanwhile, Natalie's life unfolded exactly as scripted. She dated a series of mediocre men my parents adored. She worked in PR, a job that sounded impressive, but mostly involved Instagram posts and influencer events. She moved into a luxury apartment downtown that my parents helped furnish. Then she met Brandon. Brandon was everything my parents wanted in a son-in-law, finance guy, good family, stable, boring. They got engaged after 8 months. My mother cried happy tears. My father opened a bottle of expensive wine. The engagement party was planned like a royal wedding. I was invited, of course. My mother called personally. "Claire, you'll come, won't you? It's so important to Natalie." I almost said no. But something stopped me. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the petty satisfaction of watching them pretend we were a normal family. Maybe I wanted to see if they'd even notice I existed. I said yes. The party was at my parents' house in Mill Valley, a place they'd bought when I was in college, a sprawling ranch with views of the bay. I drove across the Golden Gate Bridge in my old Honda. I still had it, still drove it, a choice that felt both practical and symbolic. I wore a simple black dress, the kind that blends into backgrounds. I brought an expensive bottle of wine as a gift, not because I wanted to be generous, but because I knew my mother would check the label. When I arrived, Natalie answered the door. She looked perfect. Hair professionally styled, makeup flawless, engagement ring catching every light source like a disco ball. "Claire." She hugged me, the kind of hug that doesn't actually involve touching. "I'm so glad you came." She wasn't. But we both pretended. Inside, the house was full of people I didn't know, Natalie's friends, Brandon's family, my parents' country club crowd. I floated through conversations, smiled at strangers, nursed a glass of wine I didn't drink. My mother found me in the kitchen. "Claire, you look thin. Are you eating?" "I'm fine, Mom." "Are you still in that little apartment?" "Yep. You know, if you ever need help." "I don't." She blinked, surprised by the edge in my voice, then recovered. "Well, Natalie's showing everyone her ring. You should go look." I didn't. I went outside onto the deck where the air was cooler and I could breathe. That's where Uncle Howard found me. Uncle Howard was my father's older brother, a retired engineer with no filter and a tendency to say exactly what everyone else was thinking. My parents barely tolerated him, but family is family. He walked up holding a martini, his face already flushed from drinking. "Claire, haven't seen you in ages. How's the city treating you?" "Good. Busy. Your mother says you're still renting. A smart girl like you should be building equity." I felt the familiar tightness in my chest. "Here we go. Actually, I'm not renting anymore." His eyebrows lifted. "Oh? You bought it 2 years ago. Well, look at you. Good for you. What did you get? A condo? Little 1-bedroom in the Sunset." Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the wine I hadn't drunk. Maybe it was years of smiling through diminishment. Maybe I was just tired of being underestimated. "No," I said clearly. "A house. 4 bedrooms. Victorian. Ashbury Heights." Uncle Howard's smile faltered. "Ashbury Heights? Jesus, Claire, that's not cheap." "No," I agreed. It appraised at $1.5 million last month. His face went through several emotions: confusion, disbelief, something like respect. And then I heard it. The silence spread behind us like a ripple. I turned. My mother was standing in the doorway, champagne frozen halfway to her lips. My father was beside her, expression caught between shock and something that looked like betrayal. Natalie had stopped mid-conversation with a group of friends, her mouth literally hanging open. Brandon, bless him, looked confused. Wait, who has a house? Uncle Howard, oblivious to the bomb he'd dropped, laughed. Claire does. Hell of a house, sounds like. How'd you swing that on a marketing salary? Every eye in the visible radius was on me now. The string quartet kept playing, but it sounded tinny, distant, like someone had turned down the volume in reality. My mother recovered first. She always did. Claire, this is hardly the time. The time for what? I kept my voice calm. Uncle Howard asked a question. I answered. My father set down his drink. His voice was tight. We should discuss this privately. Why? I looked directly at him. It's just a house. Natalie talks about her apartment all the time. Is it only okay when she does it? Natalie's face flushed red. This is my engagement party, Claire. Could you not make this about you? The irony was so thick I could taste it. 28 years of everything being about her, and the moment I existed too loudly, I was the selfish one. I'm not making anything about me, I said. I answered Uncle Howard's question. That's it. My mother's voice dropped to the register she used when she was truly angry, soft, cold, controlled. We'll talk about this later. There's nothing to talk about. You bought a house without telling us? Why would I tell you? You didn't help pay for it. You didn't co-sign. It's mine. The word hung there. Mine. Not ours. Not family money. Mine. My father's face was doing something complicated. He looked hurt, which was rich considering he'd never asked about my life beyond surface pleasantries. How did you afford it? He asked the question like an accusation. I worked. I invested. I was saved. On what, 60,000 a year? I haven't made 60,000 a year since I was 24, Dad. Another ripple of silence. My mother's champagne glass was trembling slightly. Natalie's voice came out strangled. You're lying. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was 25, pretty, engaged to a man whose personality could be described as pleasant. She'd had everything handed to her, and she still thought she'd earned it. I'm not lying, Natalie. I'm just not performing poverty to make you feel better anymore. Claire. My mother's voice cracked like a whip. That's enough. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. 28 years of not enough, and they wanted me to swallow this moment too. You know what's funny? I heard myself say, you spent my entire life telling me I wasn't special. That I was just okay. Just average. And I believed you for so long. But I'm not average. I'm just quiet. There's a difference. My father stepped forward. Claire, you're making a scene. Am I? Or am I just refusing to be invisible? Brandon, still confused, whispered to Natalie, what's happening? Natalie burst into tears. Actual tears, mascara starting to run, the full performance. You're ruining my party. And there it was. The script I'd known my entire life. Natalie cries. I'm the villain. Everyone comforts her. I disappear. Except I didn't disappear this time. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and I saw her clearly for the first time. She wasn't a monster. She was just small. Small in the way people are when they can only love one way, when their approval is a spotlight that can only shine on one person at a time. I picked up my purse from the counter. I'm going to go. Claire, wait. My father's voice followed me. I didn't wait. I walked through the living room full of staring guests, past the white roses and crystal vases, past the string quartet still playing something light and meaningless. Uncle Howard caught my arm at the door. Hey, kid. For what it's worth. I'm proud of you. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and walked out into the cool night air. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. First my mother, we need to talk. This was inappropriate. Then my father, come back. Let's discuss this calmly. Then Natalie, I can't believe you did this to me. I turned my phone off and drove home, to my house, my Victorian, my $1.5 million proof that I was worth more than they'd ever given me credit for. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the turret room, looking out at the city lights, and I felt something settle inside me. Not happiness. Not quite. But peace. The kind that comes from finally, stopping the performance. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. My phone stayed off for 3 days. When I finally turned it on, I had 62 missed calls and 47 text messages. My mother's texts escalated from disappointed to angry to almost pleading. You embarrass this family. How could you be so selfish? Your sister is devastated. Please call me. We need to fix this. My father's were shorter, more formal. We should speak. This behavior is unacceptable. Call when you're ready to apologize. Natalie's were predictably dramatic. You ruined the happiest night of my life. Everyone was talking about you instead of my engagement. Mom is crying. Are you happy now? I hope your stupid house was worth it. I read them all once, then deleted them. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Sorry I existed too loudly? Sorry I stopped pretending to be less than I am? I went to work. I came home. I sanded the floors in the second bedroom. I planted lavender in the front garden. I lived my life like their disappointment was whether I could simply choose not to stand in. Uncle Howard called. I answered. Hell of a party, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Your mother's still mad at me. Sorry. Don't be. I'm not. Listen, Claire, I don't know what's going on with your family, but I've known your dad his whole life. He's got a blind spot the size of Texas when it comes to fairness. Always has. But that doesn't mean you should make yourself smaller to fit his limitations. I'm not planning to. Good. Also, I told my wife about your house. She wants the address. She collects photos of painted ladies. I gave it to him. 3 days later, a card arrived. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note for the renovation. From someone who sees you. Uncle Howard and Aunt Diane. I cried for the first time since the party. Not sad tears. Grateful ones. A week after the engagement party, my mother showed up at my house. I was in the front yard pruning the hedge when her silver Mercedes pulled up to the curb. She got out slowly, like approaching a dangerous animal. Claire. Mom. She looked at the house, really looked at it, and I saw her face go through the same emotions Uncle Howard's had. Disbelief. Calculation. Something that might have been envy. It's lovely. Thank you. Can I come in? I hesitated. Then I led her up the front steps, through the original oak door with its beveled glass window, into the entryway with the restored chandelier. Her heels clicked on the hardwood. She touched the crown molding, looked up at the high ceilings, peered into the living room with its bay windows and fireplace. You did this yourself? Most of it. It must have cost a fortune. It did. She turned to face me. Why didn't you tell us? Why would I? We're your family. Are we? The question came out softer than I intended, but no less sharp. Her face tightened. That's not fair. Mom, you paid for Natalie's entire college education. You bought her a car. You furnished her apartment. You threw her an engagement party that probably cost more than my student loans. When did you ever ask if I needed help? When did you ever offer? You always seemed fine. You never asked for anything. I shouldn't have to beg for the same treatment you gave her automatically. She looked away. You're different from Natalie. You're stronger. More independent. We knew you'd be okay. That's not a compliment, Mom. That's an excuse. Silence. Long and uncomfortable. Finally, she said, she really is devastated, you know. Natalie. She cried for 2 days. Because I have a house? Because you made her engage with you. I almost laughed. I answered a question. That's it. The fact that everyone made it into a thing says more about this family than it does about me. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. You've always been difficult. No. I've always been inconvenient. There's a difference. She stood there in my entryway, in my house, surrounded by proof of the life I'd built without her, and she looked lost. Like the script had been thrown out and she didn't know her lines anymore. What do you want from me, Claire? The question caught me off guard. What did I want? An apology? Recognition? 20 years of fairness I'd never get? I don't want anything, Mom. I just want to stop pretending we're something we're not. And what are we? Related. But not close. Not anymore. She flinched like I'd slapped her. You don't mean that. I do. And saying it out loud felt like setting down a weight I'd carried so long I'd forgotten it was there. My mother left without saying goodbye. I watched her Mercedes pull away from the curb and disappear down the hill, and I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just the quiet relief of finally telling the truth. But the story didn't end there. It never does it? Families are like knots. The harder you pull away, the tighter some threads hold. 2 weeks later, my father called. Not texted. Called. Which meant it was serious. Claire, we need to talk. About what? Can I come over? I almost said no. But curiosity won. Fine. He arrived an hour later, alone, in his old Volvo. He looked tired, older than I remembered. He walked through the house the same way my mother had, cataloging, calculating, trying to reconcile the daughter he thought he knew with the woman who owned this. We sat in the kitchen. I made coffee. He wrapped his hands around the mug like he was cold. Your mother's upset. I know. So is Natalie. I know. And you don't care? I care that they're upset. I don't care that I'm the reason. There's a difference. He nodded slowly. When did you get so hard? When I realized being soft just meant getting stepped on. He winced. Is that really how you see us? As people who stepped on you? Dad, you spent my entire life treating me like I was less important than Natalie. Don't act surprised that I noticed. We didn't. You did. You do. You still are. Natalie gets the attention, the money, the support. I get told I'm strong enough to handle being alone. You're strong. Stop using my strength as an excuse to neglect me. The words came out louder than I intended, echoing in the quiet kitchen. He sat back, shocked. I don't think I'd ever raised my voice at him before. I didn't realize, he said quietly. I didn't realize you felt that way. Because you never asked. We sat in silence. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a car drove past. Finally, he said, I'm proud of you, Claire. This house, everything you've built. I'm proud. Are you? Or are you just surprised I succeeded without you? Direct hit. His face crumpled slightly. I'm sorry, he said. And for a moment, he sounded like he meant it. I'm sorry we made you feel less than. That was never our intention. Dad, good intentions don't fix years of being a second choice. What can I do to make this right? I looked at him across the table, this man who'd helped make me but never really knew me, and I realized the truth. Nothing. You can't fix it. It's too late for that. But you can stop making it worse. How? Stop defending Natalie when she's wrong. Stop pretending we're equally loved when we're not. Stop asking me to make myself smaller so she can feel bigger. He didn't answer right away. Then he nodded. Just once. Small and defeated. He left shortly after. I watched him drive away and felt the same nothing I'd felt when my mother left. I'd spent 28 years wanting their approval. Now that I'd stopped wanting it, I didn't know what to do with the space it left behind. The answer came from an unexpected place. I started therapy. Not because of the engagement party incident. I'd been considering it for a while. But that night accelerated things. My therapist, Dr. Angela Torres, was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach. In our third session, I told her about the house, the party, the fallout. She listened without interrupting, then asked, what were you hoping would happen when you told them? I don't know. Recognition? Respect? Did you get it? No. I was shocked and felt resentment. Because you violated the family narrative. I frowned. What narrative? The one where Natalie succeeds and you struggle. The one where your parents are needed. You disrupted that. You showed them you didn't need them, and for people who define themselves through being needed, that's threatening. Something clicked. So they're not mad I succeeded. They're mad I succeeded without them. Exactly. It should have felt like vindication. Instead, it just felt sad. Over the next few months, I started building a different kind of life. One that didn't revolve around family approval or proving my worth. I joined a book club. I started taking weekend trips to places I'd never been, Big Sur, Mendocino, Portland. I invited coworkers over for dinner parties where I cooked and laughed and didn't think about whether I was enough. I renovated the turret room into a reading space, built-in bookshelves, window seat with cushions, a lamp that cast warm light over pages. I hired a gardener to help with the front yard, and together we turned it into something neighbors stopped to photograph, roses and lavender and native grasses that swayed in the fog. The house stopped being proof of something. It just became home. Natalie got married 6 months after the engagement party. I wasn't invited to the bridal shower or the bachelorette party. I was invited to the wedding, but the invitation came late, clearly obligatory. I RSVP'd no. My mother called. "Claire, you have to come. She's your sister." "I don't have to do anything, Mom. People will talk. Let them. Please." For me. No. I didn't go. I spent that weekend painting the guest bedroom a soft gray and installing new light fixtures. I felt no guilt. Just peace. Uncle Howard called afterward. "You missed quite a show. Your mother cried through the entire ceremony. Your dad looked like he'd rather be anywhere else." And Natalie kept looking at the door like she was waiting for someone. She was probably looking for her friends. She was looking for you, kid. Whether she'd admit it or not. The realization should have felt good. It didn't. It just felt empty. A year passed. Then another. Life continued. My parents and I maintained distant, polite contact, birthday texts, holiday cards. Natalie and I didn't speak at all. I got promoted at work. I paid off my student loans. I turned 30 and threw myself a party in my house, inviting the people who actually knew me. Uncle Howard and Aunt Diane came. They brought champagne and stories about my father as a kid that made me see him differently, still flawed, but human. On my 31st birthday, something unexpected happened. An envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a card. From Natalie. "Claire, I don't know if you'll even read this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I've been in therapy for 6 months now. Brandon's idea. Turns out being someone's favorite child doesn't actually prepare you for real life. Who knew? I'm not writing to apologize, not because I don't owe you one, but because I'm not sure I fully understand what I'm apologizing for yet. My therapist says I need to sit with the discomfort first. But I wanted you to know I see it now. The difference in how we were treated. I didn't see it before because I benefited from it. That's a shitty excuse, but it's the truth. I also wanted to say, I'm jealous of you. I always have been. You built something real. Everything I have feels like it was handed to me, and now I don't know if I'm actually capable of anything on my own. Anyway, I'm not asking for forgiveness or even a response. I just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. And I'm sorry I made your existence harder. Natalie. I read the card 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and went about my day. A week later, I wrote back. Natalie. I read your card. Thank you for writing about it. I'm not ready to have a relationship with you yet. Maybe I won't ever be. But I appreciate that you're trying to understand. For what it's worth, you're capable of more than you think. You just have to stop waiting for permission to find out. Claire. I didn't hear back. I didn't expect to. But 6 months later, Uncle Howard called. Did you hear about Natalie? What about her? She left Brandon. Moved out to Sacramento. Started some kind of consulting business. Something about social media strategy for nonprofits. Good for her. Your mother's devastated, of course. Can't understand why she'd throw away stability. I smiled despite myself. Maybe she got tired of living someone else's version of her life. Sounds familiar. Yeah, it does. I'm 33 now. I still live in Victoria. I've added a garden office in the back where I work on freelance projects. I adopted a cat named Widget who sleeps in patches of sunlight and judges me silently. My parents and I have settled into a comfortable distance. We see each other twice a year, Thanksgiving and my father's birthday. Conversations are polite, surface level. They ask about work. I ask about retirement. No one mentions the engagement party. No one asks why Natalie and I don't talk. Some wounds heal. Some just scar over. Both are okay. Natalie sent me a Christmas card this year. Just a card. No note. But on the front was a photo of her in front of a small office with her business name on the window. She looked tired. She also looked happy. I put it in my refrigerator. I don't know if we'll ever be close. I don't know if I want that. But I'm glad she's building something that's hers. I understand that need better than anyone. Last month, Uncle Howard and Aunt Diane invited me to their anniversary dinner. My parents, 5:49 p.m., were there. So was Natalie. It was the first time we'd all been in the same room since the engagement party 3 years ago. It was awkward. Painfully so. But no one cried. No one yelled. We ate dinner and talked about safe topics, weather, politics, the neighbor's new dog. At one point, my mother looked at me across the table and said, "Claire, how's the house?" "Good. I just redid the kitchen. I'd like to see it sometime. If that's okay." I nodded. "Okay." Natalie glanced at me. "Me too. If you'd want me to." "Maybe." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just a door left slightly open. Not an invitation. Just a possibility. After dinner, Natalie caught me in the hallway. "Claire, wait." I stopped. She looked nervous. "I know I don't deserve this, but do you think we could ever be sisters again? Real ones?" I thought about it. I really thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe. But it would have to be different. I can't go back to being the one who disappears so you can shine. I don't want that either. Not anymore. Then maybe we will start over. No history. Just two people trying to figure each other out." She nodded, eyes wet. "I'd like that." We didn't hug. We didn't make promises. We just stood there in the hallway of Uncle Howard's house, two sisters who'd grown up in different families despite sharing parents, and we acknowledged that maybe, someday, we could build something new. Or maybe not. Either way was okay. I drove home that night through the city I'd chosen, to the house I'd bought with money I'd earned, to the life I'd built without permission. I sat in the turret room with Widget curled beside me and looked out at the lights stretching toward the bay. And I felt something I'd spent 33 years searching for. I felt enough. Not because my family finally saw me. Not because Natalie apologized or my mother visited or my father said he was proud. But because I saw myself. And that was more than enough. If you've ever been the overlooked child, the one who had to build their own validation from scratch, you already know how this story ends. It doesn't end with a dramatic reconciliation or perfect family harmony. It ends with you, sitting in a space you created, realizing you don't need their approval anymore because you've given it to yourself. And that's the real revenge. Not proving them wrong. Just proving yourself right. Hit that subscribe button if this story reminded you that being underestimated is sometimes the greatest gift because it means they never see you coming. Drop a comment telling me about a time you built something they said you couldn't. And remember, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's building a life so full that their opinion becomes irrelevant.